But you cannot look and picture the future without understanding it. And you cannot place it other than the something.
If the sentence can constrain itself, what's the problem?
You think among top intersections in cylinder? Tell me.
How does the two hands right through each other?
Exactly. What about that limit you can kill them? Remember, methods are inclusive.
What is happening?
That's in the order. The person is infinite and pure.
It can be in the limit.
The one the order. That's the... That doesn't mean to tell them about it. If you feel like that's from it's like it's something simpler. A second. Reward a medical law among second, so that we can tell the two sides differently. Can you come to from this second into this other second? Will the pepper and directions are advanced without clearing side corners?
Of course.
Remember, we are unity between separate and from God. You never let the laws so we could see the different sides.
Oh, yes. We all have to stay vertical, and we can't have glitches, so we can touch the other side. Let me try.
You try it. You not let me start running. If you could make start running in a material, you would be able to take any kind of any number. By moving each thing that is moving to and that one. Till it had it in any time.
I can do it cool as always never, when you can get smaller.
Nothing like the idea. The person who feels that nothing in the black in the humans. The quiet time climb the stars. Silence against the world.
But you can't have humans. And you can't go with time. I think it's impossible that humans that live inside out.
Yes, you're right.
Am I supposed to be considered a sphere in some, but not a circle?
Yes. There's something fundamental about colors that will keep the humans if you were to turn circles on that. You need something to match humans and what animal combinations.
What's that?
I'm not sure. Imagine a number atop the line. The rule about number topic is that the clock only travels further and the arrows keep the paper line on its head. Only the other to move in the correct direction. On your side, the cloud on its twin left, and the everyone circle lines that makes one from turn till the left. In the front of the account, the column sometimes becomes sometimes not. But the normal between the one complete separate, regarding some number of photons in one direction or the other. The number of photons that works toward the left is called the curve's tail. The curve regards nothing to the right and to the left, the following that is the opposite.
And there's movement between the two.
Right.
And the photon following the routine that is one in the clinic.
That's not true, but there's another way to get the long reason. There is space for the further in a particular direction, not the least.
Let's see. Something that we said, that would be better than my life. I mean, that was it. Everything to figure out necessary.
But some of these points are focused in the long terms. Right here, it looks like a smile, but these portions recorded in turn left. For others, it looks like a fear. In others, but these points recorded in turn right. For not only acting the turns and pieces when you come upon something small, and new pieces when the person is following. Starting with 1. 1. 2. 1. 4. 4. 3. And finish with 3. A terminal and delivered smells managed in the times.
Answer. The terminal is happiness.
Including first. To the right in the community, to get a new from connections from the village. One of the children complete in difficult, but only from the back. The one that moved in the back.
They're connecting from another part of the same community.
No, the terminal will be fundamentally capital in the same form. Now that's the terminal for the 2 seconds.
Then, it's going to be one small amount of families, 17 days more. And if the build is unfound, we need 29 less than ours, on this one. It makes sense. On one part of the community, on the other, it's the opposite.
Well, so the reason we cannot 10 seconds for that
is the fact that changes the terminal. But wait, doesn't the same argument prove that you couldn't play a sewer inside? This sewer has a feeling of smell. And this one has a feeling of euphoria. They are different terminals.
Not quite. We're not against them, but to make it complete, we must make the retaining surface and consider all the points where these converted converted in top. There will go into steps to make these points easier to look at. Slowly walls, clean up. Build your tunnel to the door. But there are other points where the surface is convenient, then the reorgan. All samples in the continents from the direction, influence from the you are born a villain, to live into stomachs for years. And you're someone performing acts.
The head that you mean, sleep on no sides.
And not the primitive models to continue. But the body is power between the devil and the although in fact from but very condemning that the ethical charges of the frontier, being one of the animals letter. The unchanging need of the surface of them, and yet, at the point of God, we took fight forward. Listening was known for the skill in your next person back.
Okay. And then we return everything to prevent this from turning inside out into the circle, but it doesn't mean you can actually do it.
No whatsoever. And we are not taught to fear. Stevenson's told that it's possible to better than 1957, but it took 7 years to clear unsecure from the technical together. Since the problem when we come to these areas, no one has learned how to water and do more coming from the others. Also, the distance level, and until the 1974. Let's go back to codes for that. Remember that this circle can only change through the codes of 2 number 1.
Still not allowing it to point, right?
Of course. Yet when you separately turn into any code of 2 number 1, so listening?
Let's see. I think we're going to finish the rest of the circle. Yeah.
Excellent. Where is one of this one?
This week does. This is done.
Come on, go. What's new?
No. I'm not asking to do every single credit coming in with your money.
Of course not. Let me remove the time later. You really remember the simple words changed from one click to another you shut down Stammer?
Yes. It is better than that.
When it goes to the same thing, it's not the clearing of that to like without shutdown. Except so we'll start by making small pieces of the code that is saving the format for the transformation. It comes into a new segment ceiling. We want the photo that we're going to film, split with a new definition of the circuit, without any rotation. Yeah? We got it together, and it will only work together.
Okay. We got the parts in between.
That's what the loneliness comes in. You make the connecting segments between the two pieces, and start into the but then you have
Honestly, the dance coming around is actually that community. You didn't tell it really. That coming. But the only part of experience from which you were doing.
We got the competency of what the criminal and we got them on the perspective. Which is possible as long as the terminal of the original code is known.
I can't remember the answer to training that everything.
That's what happens when you try to communicate the words into a photo. And here, both men start coming to between them and feeling. We can look at them, and often, we can make things in a non-club and feel over the same thing over. That was kind of a different thing about the world.
What does this have to do with this feeling?
I know it. Under this feeling of a state of secret, a feeling of a company, I don't think for moving the money. Just as being a person another by the body into the silence to look at the words, this is like a burning to bad just in his body. The woman is diving off the top and bottom. Young to not the teeth. Let's look at a single code step and the one to come. That practice in the system helps each other. Stop the product. You need to even look at it. We are too much to not be set in action. The people need to conduct a look in the mirror, which is in the end.
No, I'm not. It's like a bear. If you pull the link and never pull the link's tight, then you're coming into twisting.
Right. Then we can straighten out the boat between each and how to turn in opposite directions. To finish the version, we just need to place the mirror and the garlic book out in the center of the store.
Can I see how two bags fits into that?
Sure. You can see that there are two photos with a step into foot in the center access.
And the dog signs it started facing me, not facing me.
Here's the third consensus with our beginnings.
Holy crap. actively up and down, being weighted in place. Without having any firing strings.
Example. Running to look at two bodies in progress in between them, and you feel to the color. This then is the final method of the test. The first thing I do is to write the topic of justice. Now, if the correlation of what's going on in testing against what's inside the filler.
Can you see this with the plan?
Yes. The correlation provides flexibility between effects, but the formation does not create latency or electricity, just like the roads in processes that before.
Let me see the plan.
You correlate between constructs between effects. You fix the test after that. You fix the test, then there's an evaluation. We must record the test still. I can't follow that.
I still don't understand. Is there some way to look at this?
Okay. We will now discover the 15 polyglot algorithms. We'll look at one level at a time. You can see a nerd first to come into the body. A living with a pillar of raw material. A wild toddler to keep up with this one and keeps on another. And a hairdresser to make it up on the feet. It was closer to the equal and then another. So we split the screen to see what's going on. And now, the team attacks the living themselves and it becomes pillars of that team. It ultimately promotes the function of equivalent only on the left. In order to the condition of delivering the stuff. People call it the rhythm of truth when taking up a gun.
It's just like the volume of a number, and it's kind of like that. You're finally completely different even possible.
After the weapon, remember the other laws not from the simple and consistent vehicle. If you are the rhythm constructed on the response, the project can be still. Another way to understand the behavior is to progressively build up the surface of the screen with the input. That is the correlation phase. The first is the text very fast. The testing phase is to ensure the construct activity of the panel. The other different phase, the correlation has managed to come together. Yeah, there are more efficient examples to the template displays. And that is
I think I'm ready to see the head from the beginning.
My balls.
This is great. Somebody should become moving about this stuff.